already. Hopefully I don't have a toaster. If I do have a toaster, you'll be quick to tell me, I'm sure. Would like to make sure that this actually gets all of the work done that it needs to. And for a second, we're actually going to go do a little bit of a cheat here, right? We're going to right click, new window. That way you can't see exactly what I'm looking at, but you can tell that I'm trying to figure out whether or not this works. We're going to go over here. We're going to make sure that this loads up well enough. We had some inconsistencies in the video format and in the quality previously, so we're going to see if that works out, see if everything is going fine, and it looks like, yes, in fact, it is going fine. It looks smooth, it looks nice, it looks beautiful, it looks wonderful, everything is excellent, and so here we are. We're now on to game 2. We already went through game 1 of TLO versus Mana, and I said that the decisive point was that TLO couldn't, or didn't, however you want to say that, didn't go and grab a 4th base at the time that he was making the attacks with the hedgehogs, and that the layout of the map was very much in Mana's favor. Now that we're over here and we're actually on game number 2, on not Secluded Grove, but we are on a map that is very Antigua, not Antigua, very much Scrapyard Station, very much Stronghold Fabius if you're from LittleWarGame. Then we're going to take a look right here and see how Mana plays and how TLO plays, given what they know about the previous game. Again, this is analysis. This is not a cast. Taste Toast has already beat me to it by about 11, now 12 hours. I would highly encourage you, go watch on Dreamhack's channel so you can go take that out. But if you do enjoy this kind of analysis, then obviously this will get ported right to YouTube. Hopefully the quality looks a bit better for you as well. In the upper right-hand side with Mana, so I've talked about this before, but I am modeling the Infernals as more of a rack-style unit. They have the Veil, which is the 50% white armor or white health that they have in addition to their base health that they get whenever they are on Shroud. They can generate Shroud either by their starting buildings or by expanding it with Shroud stones. I model them as a Rax unit or as a Rax army, and what I mean by that is that they are not very fast. Even though their fiends are fast, there's an opportunity cost of sacrificing the brutes in order to make that happen, and so they don't want to give up the direct power for the speed unless they actually have to, or they're about to lose the unit anyways. And so I model them as a faction that wants to be more defensive. They have meat farms that passively make units that will help defend. They have Shroud, which will add Veil, or the Mist, which will make it more likely that they can tank something that they would like to. And then also, if you look, Scout, much faster than our Brute. And also the Hedgehogs that TLO made in game 1 on Secluded Steppe, or in Secluded Grove, much more powerful. Now, I want to note that that was the Infernal side. The Vanguard side, the human side, the Resistance side, in the bottom right-hand side, which is covered by TLO, I modeled them as a very fast faction. Not because all of their units are fast, Lancers aren't exactly blistering, but if you look at how quickly this Scout is moving around and the delay that it's causing, and if you look at how quickly they also move with their Hedgehogs, I model them as having the faster units, and so the comparative advantage is their speed, and that means that we should expect that they, as the faster faction, are taking bases more aggressively and with fewer units, because the Infernal faction has to come and run down, and also because they have Bobs. Bobs so there are 4 charges that are on the command post, and Vanguard can hold off with Bobs, and Bobs become so strong they can handle what look to be tier 2, borderline tier 3 units with just their Bobs, provided they can get a full surround. And so on a map like this, knowing that he's down 1 game, I would have expected TLO to kind of use the fact that there is a close air distance. So I talk about this in LittleWarGame and other RTSs, but if you are the faction that is physically faster on the ground, then you're looking at armies, bases, and movement in terms of what is the distance from location to location, how many attack paths do I have to surround to get some work done, as we see some light harassment happening over here for the Lancer. He's going to be able to poo them away, so that'll be okay. But if you're then looking at air, you have to look at your bases not just in terms of the ground distance between them, but the air distance between them. And right now, both players are going to be taking the horizontal bar, right? And the upper third is going to be Mana, and the bottom third is going to be TLO. And I do like what TLO is doing here, although Mana has a faster seeming third base. It looks like TLO is going to be matching that somewhat. I would like him to have a faster 4th base, but this may be a consequence of the way that Fiends work, that he has to make a certain amount of minimum defense to not just die. If we look at this, we can see that any tech that gets made in the main base could be an air assault, and the ground path is quite windy and a bit awkward in the middle right-hand side of the 3 p.m. location. And we are seeing some Fiends go out. Now, this is something I want to talk about. I'm mentally modeling this as I'm watching Vanguard versus Infernals. It does look like Infernals are it looks like it's very strong, and like it's a very impressive capability to be able to have a brute. It looks like it's a little bit worse than a lancer. It's slow, but at any time you can just flip the switch, change them around, and make them fiends. Every time you see a set of 2 fiends, I want you to model that that is the opportunity cost of that brute not being there. The fewer brutes there are, the longer it is until the main engagement. So every time that a brute gets sacrificed, you're delaying the main push, the big central battle that it looks like Infernals want to have. There's a Shroud Stone going down right here, by the way. I hope you can see my mouse, and you can. Now, the Fiends will be able to kick this off. I think a little bit of missed micro here from the Lancer. I think the Lancer thought he could get some more damage done than he could, and he actually cannot, so he's going to run away. Yep, Fiends are just going to be able to run away. Now, they do take damage slowly over time, but that won't be enough to stop these mobs from taking some damage over here. The Lancer is able to get in some, and it looks like TLO is pre-committed to this idea of, I want to have Hedgehogs, not as many as Game 1, but I want to also have a Lancer. It looks like a Lancer is a good Tier 1 stable unit, and it looks like actually the right place for the Lancer, weirdly, would not actually be in front of the, at a choke or something like that, although if you could make that, that would be excellent. I think the best place for the Lancer to be would be kind of like what we see in LittleWarGame when people make soldiers or raiders against a 2-den, against an aggressive 1-base build, if you don't know. Then you probably want to keep them with the Bobs, because the Bobs are actually the defensive powerhouse. Like, if you go in and dive on the Lancer and then they activate the overcharge, then the Bobs are going to be able to surround the Fiends, and then you don't get any damage done whatsoever. And so the Hedgehogs here are a little strange, because the Hedgehogs, they're good for putting out the fires that are going to happen around the natural and the third. Notice there's a big ground distance between the natural and the third, but that's okay, because the Hedgehog's the fastest thing on the field, right? This poor Lancer is going to go down, which is going to be very unfortunate. No way to save him. And it looks like he just does minuscule damage. Again, we're not talking about balance, but in the context that the Lancer doesn't even kill one of the Fiends before just getting tickled to death, it's really unfortunate. And actually what's good about this is, okay, yeah, and as the harass comes over here, you can see why I wasn't too worried. Like, look how strong Bobs are. Like, there you go. Tastosis mentions that's a bit of missed micro. I think that Mana was trying to make sure that the Fiends that were in the main lived and got out from the natural from there. So this is actually great. I actually like TLO's position here so far. Yes, a Bob went down, but if we look, that was 6 Fiends. Yeah, a Bob and a Lancer went down, but 3 brutes sacrificed themselves to become 6 fiends. They all died. Another brute just got surrounded. Yes, you did get an overcharge, but the third base is going up. And it looks like, curiously, Mana actually is extending the Shroud, when I don't really think that that's a problem here. I think he's got somewhat in his mind that if a lot of now I will say, this is kind of unfortunate, but if a lot of Hedgehogs were to have come out of this location, just look at the way that there is a ramp to go up here to the Therium on the right and the Illumin on the left, right? It's very, very unfortunate. So the Hedgehogs do have map control. At this point, I would have loved to see TLO go grab his 4th base. I know he just barely secured the 3rd, but this is a concept in RTS games we've seen a lot, where if your opponent commits to an attack and there is an overt amount of damage, like they take too much damage and deal too little, or a questionable amount of damage back in return, right? Then you can go take your base more aggressively, or you can tech more aggressively. And as the Hedgehogs are poking forth and just getting a little bit more damage, he is going to be going out into, I think he said a med bay. So this is going to biokinetics lab, so he can make med techs. Now, I don't really vibe with the med techs, because again, it just looks like you're kind of missing the point of the map right here. We've seen fiends crawl around over this way, right, as attack paths to get down over here. I actually would like, if you're the faster faction here, I agree that you should be expanding this way. Maybe I'll have to check the architecture of the map. I know there are trees or something right over here, but I actually would have liked Mana to take this base instead of this. Like, have a whole corner right here. Hold the ramp, right? Have a meat farm and a shroud stone, and the army sits here, and then you have 4 bases for the cost of 3 locations. And also, this becomes a bulwark to hold off against any aggressive airplay. We do know that there are air units in the game. Mana is going to end up at the end of this game. Part of what he's going to do is overtax TLO by bringing in Spriggans. Might have to change the name on that one to avoid an HR complaint, but new game, we'll figure it out. And the hedgehogs are pretty good, right? Map control. The problem is that they're map control, but they're not quite in an actual place to give that map controller to be useful as a map control unit. What I mean by that is these two hedgehogs, first off, you can tell by the number that you're seeing play that there's not going to be a heavy tax, like a heavy weight put into making more of them. And also, I would really love the hedgehogs to be in this central area. It looks like this is a very long path, right? It's going to take a long time to go ahead and get down this. In fact, this section of the map is almost exactly like Stronghold Fabius. And this only gets attacked once these sections, these corners, these cross points here are actually being held. And then when the middle is starting to get carved up, that's when the long attacks on the left-hand side happen. The reason that that takes so long to happen in Little Wargame, and because of the slower rate of comparatively slower rate of movement and attack speed and the comparatively greater health of units in Stormgate, I suspect that it follows more of Little Wargame rules in this sense, is that the full attack on the left-hand side is really awkward when your opponent might have air units or can attack the central path. And in the context of Stormgate, we also have creeps, right? Camps. You can call them what you want. All right, dog. So the dog here is just checking. I mean, the dog, whatever it does from here doesn't really matter. It's just checking to make sure that mana doesn't have the double base. If mana did have the double base, there would be problems in T- immediately. And also checking whether or not the siege camp is being captured over here on the side. And it looks like they are. This is a pretty good move around, I think, from TLO. The problem is that we're going to see that this catapult that gets generated from the siege camp generates a lot more value than the attack on the left-hand side. Now, I will say, again, he's kind of sacrificing, I think TLO is sacrificing a bit by having Lancers. Lancers don't look like they're much faster than Brutes, like not by much, really. And Brutes can split off into units that have 45, 30 Veil and 30 Veil, 60 health, something like that. Yeah, they decay over time, but that's bonus. I think they come alive with half Veil. So that's a 75 hit, two 75 hit point units coming off of a 190 slash 95 unit for the Brute, and Lancers are 240. And honestly, one Lancer didn't look so good against 6 Fiends that I'm like pre-committing to having a lot of them. So they don't really remind me actually of these units, these Lancers. They don't remind me of Zealots. I know that that's the basis that Tastosis has. That's what the team is coming from, but they do remind me a lot more of Soldiers. Right? Soldiers in Little Wargame are very tanky, not very fast, have base armor, and have 250 health with an 18 damage sword. Right? And the 18 damage does a great job of cleaving through enemy workers in Little Wargame and also buildings. And that's what I think Lancers are good for. I think Lancers actually, I'm not in the beta, but if I were, we'd be dropping Lancers. We'd be using like Lancer Catapult, basically. That's like a sturdier way of playing this, and I don't much like what I'm seeing here, because it is going to kill the Shroud Stone. But the problem is, what it's really doing also is making sure that mana isn't having his cake and eating it too. Right? He's not taking the base over on the left-hand side, this 10 o'clock base. If mana was taking the 10 o'clock base, it would almost surely go down. And we see that actually he's having some difficulties holding the value up here, but we're going to find out that getting the catapult is that much more valuable. And killing the Shroud Stone is not that impressive in the grand scheme of things. Yes, one worker does go down, and I think that upgrade, that little like electrical bolt that we're seeing, is the upgrade from the Lancer, where every time it takes damage, it gets a little bit faster. And what's interesting about that is that it encourages them, like once you fight them, you can't just turn and leave, which is a big deal. Happens all the time in Little Wargame. Soldiers against beast units will fight and then realize they can't win the fight right now, so they'll attack and then they'll leave. And having this makes it so that the Lancers kind of force more of a commitment. But what's funny is they don't actually get better at the commitment, right? It makes them better at themselves retreating when they take damage and themselves chasing if the enemy runs away. So movement speed is pretty powerful. I can see why, but that is a control thing to do. And so the push over here on the left-hand side, it makes sense, especially with the context that you can't really control the catapult. It's heavily implied that you can't. And so I'm pretty sure that the force here that's extending down, what I would love to see is Mana go grab his 4th base. We see a worker go down right there, and he does start up the shrine, right? And this is a good point, actually, that Tastosis is making on the cast about the catapult, is that the catapult, I love that it just looks like the Little Wargame catapult. Like, listen, it's placeholder, it's a stub. Everyone could do that. 100% agree. But I love that it does the same thing. And the reason I love that the way that it fires the same way, right? It communicates the area it's going to hit, then it hits the area for 70 damage, it turns out. 300 health, 70 damage. Anyways, I'll make a point on that later. But what's interesting is that what they're saying on the cast is absolutely right. You don't want to wait until the catapult gets to your side and then fight. That's a nightmare. What you want to do is you want to delay it as much as possible and make it look like it's a bad idea to keep going, or spend resources, spend time, spend actions to try and make that less powerful. The reason I say this, even though I'm not in the alpha, beta, etc., I haven't been in any iterations of it, the reason I say that is that the catapult's functioning here the same way it does in Little Wargame, right? You don't want to just wait until they get to the end. You kind of want to wreck them in the meantime. And I liked the way that he's splitting off into 2 sides, TLO. The problem here is we're getting back to the same scenario that we had previously, which is, remember how in the first game I said it looked like here's a number of reasons also. I think the Infernals are the stand and deliver faction. Veil is 50% of a unit's health, right? That's 50% extra bonus health as long as they're on Shroud. So as they extend Shroud, they become more defensively capable. Not their workers, but their units as a whole. And they have Brutes, which can then attack, split, attack. They have pull units, like the Magmadon, right? Can slide in and then AoE stun. That's not really a disengage tool. That's an engage tool. That's a we're gonna take this fight and you're gonna accept it tool, right? So that's like that indicates that they're the stand and deliver faction. The other thing is that uh bile, the infestation, I forget what they call it exactly, but that works, that the gaunts can make is also in their favor. So and also the fact that every time they lose something, they get more, means they're the stand and deliver faction. They don't really want to send small unit here, small unit there, small unit over here. They have units that take big AoE fights, right, or big initiations. If we were using a League of Legends like Dota MOBA example, they have big initiating units. They have units that you can think of the Fiends as being a fast unit. I think it's extra. It's a skill tax extra damage for the Brute that's about to die, right? And then they have the ability to apply infection or cursed or the ability or infestation, right? So that units that they then kill that are infested will make more Fiends. So that is we fight and then we fight and then we fight, and all these things are actually debuffs on the opponent's desire to take the straight up fight, on top of the fact that the units are straight up brawlers. So I actually think that TLO, because the catapult is pushing this way, it would make holding this area in the bottom right, or bottom left rather, let's get my directions correct, very difficult. And no one has the double bases yet, and no one's sending flyers over yet, although we will see Spriggans come in later from mana. So I'm pretty sure catapults don't shoot up, another benefit that the air units would have. I wonder if air units were nerfed. Obviously, most games are not Little Wargame, where in Little Wargame, you just have a tier 1 unit called the Workshop that can make a tier 1 unit called the Catapult that 3 shots workers, right? It's probably for the best you can't control this catapult, by the way. I wonder if it does ally damage. I also wonder if they're like able to hit if it hits. I wonder if it hits units that the player is focused on. Like, could they use the catapult to get another catapult? Like, just have the one catapult, like aggro the spawn camp for the catapults and then grab more? I don't know if that's the case. Again, something I said in the previous video, I want to reiterate here, or in the previous stream, I should say, and I had some technical difficulties and we fixed that. I want to reiterate here. I'm pretty sure there's a certain level of let's not one base rush people, right? Let's get an opportunity to show out a lot of what these units do, right? Or maybe if you're losing, right? But I don't think there's any you will win or you will lose. I think it's more make sure that we show good games, right? Because this is a follow-up from having a bunch of streamers be able to look at the game and show what they thought of it, right? This is at DreamHack Atlanta itself. So there are the Spriggans, and what's interesting about the Spriggans is, let's see. Oh my god, yeah, they do. Veil is just 50% of the health of the unit. What you should take from that, by the way, is that faster Infernal units are just much better than regular, slower Infernal units. Because Veil seems to decrease at a constant rate, right? And that means that the faster a unit gets off, the better. And flying units seem to get off Shroud really quickly. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. 200, 100. That is good. It doesn't say quite what their damage is, right? I'm looking at the stream. I don't quite see what the damage is. But what's interesting here is that we do have the as everything goes down over here, this is all gravy. This is all fine. And the reason this is all fine is that Mana knows that TLO doesn't own anything on the bottom left-hand side, and also these Spriggans are doing something I call overtaxing. I love this idea. I have not heard anyone else say it, or maybe it's concurrent thinking. Maybe someone else has come up with the idea, and I've just pronounced it or announced it or suggested it in an entirely different way, right? So the idea of overtaxing is that a unit has too many roles that it has to fill, and that means it can't fulfill all of them, typically in coordination with that being a lost condition. So I'll provide an example from Little Wargame, then I'll provide an example in this. In Little Wargame, there are dragons, right? They're flying units. And you can, as a Rax player, as a Barracks player, make archers. Now, if your army has very few archers in it, right, then sometimes the scenario will come up where you have to attack wolves and dragons, which are, listen, close enough to Zergling's Mutalisks, right? Not exactly, but close enough. And you'll have Soldier Archer, which is, again, not the same thing, but bear with me and suggest that's Marauder Marines, right? Okay, from StarCraft 2. And so the archers in Little Wargame have too many jobs. They have to provide and help provide DPS on the ground if the soldiers won't win the straight up ground fight. And if they have to help with the ground fight, that means they're getting pulled off of their job of targeting the air units that only they can do. So the fight is overloading the archers because if all of the soldiers get cleaned up on the ground, then the archers can't shoot things that are up and down at the same time. So you're going to lose the fight. And if the all of the archers get picked off, then the soldiers can't win the fight because they can't shoot up. So the Spriggans here are overtaxing TLO's army, right? TLO has to deal with the front side of this army. There is still a nearly full health catapult over here on the side, right? As this like line of battle is being drawn. And the Spriggans are saying, hey, any flying units that come in, we can deal with them en masse, and if we can't, we can focus the important things in the battle. So this is actually really dangerous here for TLO, right? His ability to hold this is a bit suspect. Like the Spriggans are actually doing phenomenal work to make it more likely that TLO just loses the game right here. And notice that they just turn around and the Spriggans, their damage isn't great, but you know, look at all these low health units. Low, 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 low. I mean, pretty good micro here is the only thing I can assume is happening. And there is an exo, which exos, there seems to be a thing in Stormgate about like dealing chain damage or having multiple hits rather than a boom hit. Like a lot of the Vanguard units seem to be like boom, 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 boom hit. You know what I mean? Like let's not do this again. But you get what's going on, right? The multi hit. And so I actually think that might mean that Lancers are very good in Vanguard versus Vanguard, because if every time if you have the upgrade where every time a Lancer gets hit you move a bit faster, then it can be very hard to start a fight if you're not sure you can leave the fight because everyone has the same mobility rules, and it actually then becomes that the person who starts the fight is the person who is proccing the disadvantage state on themselves first because movement speed is that good. So Spriggan's just running back up to the Shroud area. This is fantastic because, again, the thing we weren't talking about this entire time is that the base is looking saturated over there for both players. And the problem is that, if Infernals are the stand and deliver faction, there's been a lot of stand and delivering to make sure that TLO has enough units, they're in the right spots, he's using good micro, he's paying attention to them, he's not taking too much damage from Bobs, he's activating his overcharge, right? But all of this means that now this is the reason I'm really confused as to why, and it must have been that they weren't ready or that the strategy didn't come up or it's just not as powerful in this game. But now we're running into a problem where the map is actually more favorable to TLO because there is this air path and multiple ground paths that are being dealt with. Like there's this bow right here on the left hand side. There's this like squiggle over here, right? This curve, and then there is that main to main harassment capabilities. But now that those haven't been taken up to any extent, and I do mean by any extent, by TLO, whether he's allowed to or not. I mean, notice that Moon also himself was using Infernals, so maybe Infernals is just more figured out, or it's newer. I know that there was an interview where they said, they were showing off the Gaunt's ability to infest units or infect units, and then when those units die, they explode and become fiends. And they said, yeah, it's not the most balanced thing yet. Like, it's a new faction. This stuff happens, right? So while that was all going on, we now have the reality that there is the potentially more mobile army of TLO that has been kind of sublimated into this Lancer medtech or med tank build over here, right? And that means he's just trying to straight up brawl the Infernals. And I think the Infernals have a pretty good reason to suggest that they would win. It just seems like they have a lot more micro potential in that straight up fight. Um, and so the speed camp is going to be harassed here, and this is going to be the first big engagement. Notice the Exos are going to ping these away and do plenty of damage. So TLO is not at threat of just completely losing, although the Spriggans did make his losses more painful than perhaps he would have liked previously. None of the players taking the double bases here. And I know that there were trees over there on the side. I just find it very interesting. You see this? I think we saw this in, who was it? In week 1 of the Pro League Season 3 when it was Nigat versus, who was it? It wasn't Prankster Gangster. Oh, his name is killing me now. But anyways, Nigat beat his opponent. Nigat was the beast player on the top side, and he did pretty much the same thing, right? Where he just had the whole top side, and then he could send forces sideways and sideways. And in Little Wargame on the map Stronghold Fabius, you actually want to control what is here the Vision Camp. But in that one, he just eventually got to the point where once he broke this parity line that is right here, right across this like horizontal line that I'm drawing with my map, with my mouse, and right here on the mini map, he just kept forcing units down until his opponent died, and that's pretty much what we're gonna. Unfortunately for mana, that's pretty much, unfortunately rather for TLO, that's what we're going to see here. Now, there is a speed camp. I wonder if the speed camp stacks with the Lancer ability. That would be pretty interesting to know, right? I don't know it myself, but anyone who does, that would be sick. So speed is actually very important here because it means he can just take the straight up fight. But again, like, keep in mind again that these brutes have 190 slash 95 veil. So these are about 200 hit points. The ones you're seeing here are about 200 hit points, and they can split into 2 units that have 90 slash 40 or 60 slash 30. And these are 240 health fast, yes, and healing, yes. Lancers. So the micro potential on both sides is pretty good, but you need to know that anytime the Lancers take damage, they actually have the freedom to disengage here, which I wasn't even thinking about it, but reinforces my point that this is probably the faster faction. I don't think the Lancers can win this straight up fight, but what they can do is fight back off, fight back off, fight back off, and if ever mana pre-commit commits everything into sending it and splits his brutes into fiends, he might just find that the Lancers are stronger than them, and every time he pokes the Lancer, you have speed camp boosted Lancers that then have the upgrade that every time they take damage, they move faster. That's pretty good. Yep. So we are going to see the fight here. It's going to be a fight, disengage backwards, I'm pretty sure. We do have the Magmadon who can stun units down. And then Magmadon's actually the big problem in this fight right now for TLO, because TLO has the speed camp and he has the passive, well, he has the passive effect that bothers him every time he gets hit, right, as a Lancer. But there is that small problem that the Magmadon can just slow down the unit, and if it's surrounded, it doesn't really matter, does it? There's also a pull ability that we're going to be seeing pretty soon here. Yeah, but this is what I was talking about before, and and it will, like, if Mana's not careful, if he attacks, then he gets out too far away from Shroud, too far away, and if he just sends too many attacks, the Lancers then just re-engage, right? So very fast, good couple of units. Now this is going to be a surround, and it is going to be an ugly surround. And a surround is probably the worst thing that could have happened here, because if he was positioned a little bit more to the south, right? I think if he was positioned a little bit more to the south, then he could scoot down, and then every time the Lancers got hit, he could back them up, and then there's a potential, like, chance to fight a retreating action, if you would, the entire way. But now there's no chance of it. The speed camp doesn't matter. The med tank healing them doesn't matter, and this is just a full wipe. And unfortunately, we see this sometimes in a Little Wargame where if you are the faster faction, the faster race, right, and you get wiped, that typically means the Doom push is coming. And if the Doom push starts, then just like the game, you're doomed, right? They're about to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and they're all out of bubblegum. And unfortunately, you're the next thing that's chewable, right? You are not bubblegum, but you're chewy spree, and you're going to get completely eaten up. And so what's interesting is I'm pretty sure something he could have done here, actually, TLO, knowing that he wanted to be more aggressive, is he could have probably just grabbed his own camp, right? His own camp over here. I mean, granted, the Doom push was going to start as soon as this was fortified to go down south, but then he's just trading scenarios, right? The same thing happened over here when Mana had the third base, so he could have done it over here at the fourth base. And also, this is the big area. This is the big fight. This is the big point of contention, right? Yep, and that's what he's checking there. He's just checking with the Vision Camp. Are you getting the Siege Camp? You're not? Okay. And now he's got Doom Weavers, Doom Bringers. There we go. And yeah, this thing kind of just breaks the rules for the Infernals, it looks like. Because wherever it gets dropped, it just provides Veil. And that's disgusting. Like, that's foul. Because look at how quickly Veil comes back. Like, okay, this thing doesn't have the 50%. Oh, the Harbinger? Where be the Harbinger? Okay, cool. Yeah, it breaks the rules for Veil. It's 250, 100. So the thing is that this is the stand and deliver as well. This is part of why I've got this sense from the Infernals that they are more like Rax. They do want to take, don't screw it up. Take a really, don't screw it up. Keep the lines of battle simple, and then take a big, disgusting fight. Look at how quickly the Veil is going up for this Weaver. Like, look at it. Look at it. 171, 168, 171, 180, 188. 190, 208. This thing is Chad. It is getting it's so much healing and temporary hit points. It's crazy. I mean, it is it looks very strong. I actually don't know if he needed to do that. I think he just wanted the units to not leave. Yeah, I think so, because also this is that burst of DPS I was talking about, and given that they're now on Doombringers, right, where they don't have to worry about the Veil disappearing and thus the units dying slowly over time, like, this is a very, very nasty position. Also, it's on top of production. Also, the only way to get through this, it's worth noting, the only way to get through this is to kill the Doombringers, who, because they're bringing Doom, are also the products of their own health regen, right? And I just don't think there's enough. Like, I know he's going to pull Bobs here, right? And there are defensive cannons, defensive structures over on the left-hand side. He does eat out one of the Spriggans, just completely wrecks him. It's just done. And this looks like it's not great right now for mana. Like, it's still possible, but I think the important thing to note is even though it's not dealing damage, we can think of this very similarly in Little Wargame or other RTSs as if the Doombringer, right? We could think of this as if the Doombringer is a tower, right? Because it is a tower, but instead of being an offensive or defensive tower where it deals damage, it's a support tower. It is giving passive health regeneration to all of his units. So as long as that unit's not under fire, I don't think it's even particularly close. I think TLO is just kind of getting mopped here. And it's interesting also the double base is now going down for mana over here on the upper right, upper right middle side. There we go. And all the harassment that's going to happen from here is just is whatever else. I actually don't think that the Vulcans have served particularly well this game because here's the thing, when you're the fast units, right, or the faster faction, or you have things that are like more speed focused, oriented, helpful, something like the Vulcan is actually, to me, a lot like a werewolf, right? So, like in Little Wargame, you have wolves and snakes, and they're faster than the other default barracks units. But you have this werewolf who is this, like, rolling tanky Chad, right? He's just got so much armor, so much health, passive health regeneration, and an ability called Smash that, like, sends units around him, just blows them away. That unit either gets used as drops because Smash is very effective on grouped units. Spoiler, workers are grouped units. So the Vulcan could be probably very good there. The other place that werewolves get used is in, because their nature is to grab, like when they're surrounded by units, to blow them away. It's actually very common to use wolves or fast units, cuddle up behind the enemy, hold them in place, and then walk the werewolf up and smash them. It does damage and displaces them. With the Vulcan, I'm getting the idea that they have like some kind of charge down ability, right? And the problem is I actually, again, you can use it to be an initiating unit, but I actually envision the Vulcan as not an initiating unit. I envision that as its get out of jail free card, right? Again, it's what it does in concert with everything else. The Vulcan dealing damage to the Doombringer here actually means that the fight has some chance of turning. Oh, but wait, no, he's going to get pulled. He gets pulled not by I think it's either by the Weaver or the Magmadon, but all you need to know is that, again, there's been no health damage, right? That's the thing to notice here, is that Mana's Doombringers haven't taken anything, and if the support towers aren't going down quickly at that, that's probably a good sign. Also, now they're all infested by the Gaunts, which means that if any of these units die, and this is not an ass-beating fight, so it's entirely possible, then Fiends start coming out, and it gets really, really rough. Right, and the Magmadon there is doing really well. Look, there's a bunch of damage there's some damage, finally, through all of the Veil on the Doombringer, but it doesn't actually manage to get through. And now these units are running away. I mean, they are good at running away, but this is why, if you're the runaway faction, you actually are terrified at this exact moment when your opponent just brings the support units and says, no, we're going to have a fight here, actually. It looks good. Yeah, so at this point, I mean, there is a health camp, but the units are estranged from the health camp, so they can't actually go down there and heal. Even though that is great, the problem is that the health camp is, for a certain number of seconds, going to be able to heal the units. I guarantee you they're not healing them as quickly as the Veil is getting reconstituted on top of all these units in the Shroud for the Infernals. And as soon as this is getting attacked, right, the third, now you've changed the target from the third to the fourth, and this is just the end of the game. I mean, everyone can see it. Everyone knows that that's what the case is. Everyone can know what's going on at this location. It's pretty obvious. And I want to note how strong Bobs are, though. Like, look at this. Do you Do you see that? Did you see that? Did you see how quickly that unit died and how little it did to Super Bob? Like, Super Bobs are the shit, dude. Super Bobs look sick. Yeah, and anytime there's a big infest as well, you're basically getting told by your opponent, you're going to have to run away from this fight, or if you commit to it, I'm pretty sure you're going to lose the game. So pretty good. It's good looking stuff. Yeah, I mean, TLO, the thing is, too, is that here's the scary thing, and this is why the support towers, the Doombringers, are so good. So in Little Wargame, this has happened to me literally hundreds of times because I just don't learn my lesson, I guess. So if you're the slower faction and you think you're ready to brawl, you better be sure you're ready to brawl when you step on that opponent on the faction fast races territory, because the longer that stuff lasts, the more defensive reinforcements they're going to get, and eventually their stuff is crap, but they'll just have enough stuff that there's actually too many hit points to chew through. And I want to phrase it that way. It's not that they win the fight, it's that there's just too many hit points to deal with, right? But we did see the Bob overcharge. There are still two possibilities of Bob overcharge on the side, and this is almost getting cleaned up. Almost. Oh, wait, no, it's not, because, just fiends. So this is looking excellent. It doesn't matter anymore. I mean, there's some very fast, like, cute Exo Micro over here on the side by TLO, but there's just too many units. The Doombringers still, and also the units are just streaming in from the bottom left. I want to stress as well that even if that fight had been cleaned up at that part, like, all the mobs have been picked up, everyone gets attacked, Doombringers die, the army leaves, there's still a double base over here for, mana, right? And he can just keep pushing this point right here, or wait until he goes to grab the catapult and then do it again. Yeah. Outrage for the Magmadon. Every third attack, this unit will deal area damage to nearby units with no requirement. That seems really good. Yep. Another reason I say that the Infernals are the stand and deliver. I mean, they're less of the horde and more like, I will fight you and then you will die. So, excellent. That's that there be the game.